Welcome everyone today to the University of San Diego's Salary Negotiation 101 workshop. We are very lucky to be joined with Michelle Bollinger from Northwestern Mutual, who will speak about some do's and don'ts of salary negotiation and some statistics behind it as well. So thank you, Michelle, and I'll pass it off to you today.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. And thank you to everybody who's here. It looks like we have over 30 people, so thank you so much. To those of you who will be watching the recording, thank you as well. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get started today. If you have questions as I'm going along, please feel free to put them in the chat. Kelsey, if you wouldn't mind, maybe just like pausing me or just interrupting me is fine as well, just so I can answer some questions. So we'll be talking about salary negotiations. You will see on some of these slides, they're going to be, the images might be more gender women focused, but they're for everybody, okay? I think that it's important to, know that there is that gender gap in salary negotiations. And so I didn't want anybody to be offended by the images, but just to kind of be aware of that, okay? All right, so as Kelsey said, my name is Michelle Bollinger. Just a little bit about me before we kind of get started. I am the Director of Internship Development at Northwestern Mutual, specifically in downtown San Diego. My current role, in addition to recruiting students, is to develop students. I have a long history in, well, what I would consider, I guess, a long history in working with students. So I've been working with students for more than 15 years. You'll see here these images: Southeast Missouri State University, Mizzou, Texas A&M Central. I actually just moved to California in September of 22, and I started with Northwestern Mutual. So prior to me ever even coming here, I worked at institutions in higher education. So most recently, I was a director of a career center at Texas A&M Central. Prior to that, I worked in College of Education. So I worked with students who were going to be teachers, but also individuals who were going to be professors. So I have experience working with individuals with their bachelor's degree as well as earning their doctorate. And I've also had the SA on that in careers is for student athletes. So I've had the privilege to also work with student athletes, which has given me a very broad kind of experience-based, major-based, if you will. All right, so I am a leader as well. I love Strengths Quest. I am a strength certified coach. And so I really try to utilize this when I am, whether I'm working with students directly or indirectly, and really trying to develop them, right? So I believe that I am an advocate and an ally as well. And I love empowering women around me. Again, nothing against men, okay? So a little bit about my story. So the reason I put this up here is because for my first professional job, I did not negotiate. Nobody had this conversation with me. I remember the dean of the College of Education calling me and presenting me the job offer. And without hesitation, literally, I don't think any hesitation, I said, yes. And she said, do you want to take some time to think about it? I said, no, yes. And so it would come later that I would find out that, wow, okay, I probably should have negotiated. I had an amazing mentor during my time there. Her name was Dr. Catherine Cheval. She's now the dean of the College of Education in Illinois. And she really, I think, kind of guided the pathway for me to know what it meant to really know my worth. And so I'm going to bring that up actually several times today about knowing your worth, when not just in negotiation, but when you're in the job market, as well as within your current role or the role that you will be in. I did decide to come to Northwestern Mutual because I had worked with students for so long. I had been around, hundreds of employers, thousands of different internships, and I saw so many students not necessarily take advantage of internships for that experience. And so I decided to come here primarily because this is one of the only internships that I've seen that gives you genuine hands-on experience. So what you're going to be doing as an intern would be the exact same role that you're going to be doing as a full-time financial representative. So that was something that was very important to me, but also gives me a very large platform for me to tell students, regardless if you come to Northwestern Mutual, to get experience, to go grab that internship, regardless of what stage you're at in your college career. It's never too early or too late, for that matter, to try to get an internship. Okay, so here are some statistics in negotiating. All of my slides do not look like this, I promise. This is just a lot of words up there. I don't typically just have words, but these are some important statistics in negotiating for 2023. So 70% of managers actually expect there to be a negotiation, right? But they don't necessarily state that there's going to be that flexibility. So even if it's not stated, whether in writing or verbally, 70% are expecting that. So the difference here, when I talked about that, that gap earlier, 46% of men will negotiate compared to 34% of women, okay? 58% of Americans accepted the initial offer in their current position. So insert me, 15 years ago, right? Immediately accepting and not trying to negotiate that offer. But 85% of Americans and 87% of professionals ages 25 to 35, so I know there's some individuals on this call or will be listening to this, who countered actually got some of what they asked for. So maybe you don't get everything that you ask for, but you will get some of that. 29% of job seekers negotiated their current salary, while 84% of job seekers negotiated salaries for higher pay. And then 68% of women accepted their first job offer. So that's pretty significant. More than half of women that get a job offer will accept it, okay, without kind of doing that negotiating. So I'm going to get into more so these are the statistics, but getting more so into challenges, right? So there are some challenges facing women negotiators. But these are unique challenges, right? So again, this is not just going to be about women. This is for everybody, but this is something that is very important. You saw the statistics. So some of those challenges are internal or cultural, and even the attitude or behaviors of people around us. So, sometimes it's, okay, well, she's being too aggressive or maybe too assertive. And so trying to balance that with, will we be accepted? Right? So we're going to try to unpack some of these challenges, and men face some of these challenges as well. You saw the statistics, not every single, person rather will negotiate. So we're going to go ahead and go through some of these challenges, okay? Or how to get over some of these challenges with some negotiating tips. All right, so worth. Again, I know I said this earlier. You will hear this several more times from me. This is probably one of the most important I think aspects when you negotiate is just knowing your worth, right? So again, whether you're in your current job, you're on the job market, or you're in this negotiating, know and be proud of what you can bring, be proud of who you are, and knowing, again, your worth. So do your research, right? Be realistic about the role that you're going into, as well as the salary. So if you were to do your research and you find that the average salary is, $50,000, you wouldn't come in and say, okay, I want 80, right? So we want to be realistic about this as well. So listen. So cultivating this active listening while you're in the interview process, listening to, what you're hearing, and then being able to repeat that back in your own words to an employer is going to be very important, especially when you're in this negotiating process, but also pay attention to the nonverbals, right? So whether you're on a Zoom call or even in person, somebody is going to be giving you nonverbal communication. So make sure that you're paying attention to that. Establishing a position of power, not to be, daunting or overwhelming, but let's say you are in person, right? Go ahead and take this seat at the top of the table if it's available, right? Don't necessarily just put yourself in the back. So that's not even just a negotiating, that's really just kind of making your presence in the room known, right? Whether negotiating in an interview, even if you're in a meeting and you already have a position, right? So going back to that, making a presence. Knowing your goals. So when you are negotiating, know your goals, know what your outcomes are. So why are you asking for what you're asking for, right? What is the minimum that you will accept? That's very important to know, because if you have done your research, you do know your worth, and you are offered something that is quite less than what your bottom is, it's going to make an impact in, and you accept that, it's going to make an impact in how you either wind up living your life or the opportunity to advance salary-wise a little bit later down the road. Balance your assertiveness with empathy, but making sure that you're advocating for yourself, right? So I don't know if a lot of you have heard about emotional intelligence, or whether it's professors or your career center talking about emotional intelligence. But this is something that I think is, if you have the opportunity to maybe do some research, go to some presentations about emotional intelligence, and just learning how to better assert yourself in a way that is professional and positive, but also balancing that with some assertiveness will be very beneficial for you. Again, not just in the negotiation process, but within a position and a role that you get in a company. And then practice. I'm sure if you've ever met with Kelsey, I am sure that she has told you practice, 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 whatever it may be. So make sure you practice in this negotiation. In the negotiation, I'm having a really hard time saying that today, so I apologize. But just make sure that you are practicing that with the Career Center, maybe with a professor or a friend, maybe somebody who already has a position. If you know somebody who's in a hiring type of role, you can practice with them as well. Okay, I'm going to stop right here and just ask if there are any questions before I kind of move on to the next.
There are none in the chat.
Okay. All right. So a little bit more on negotiating. Again, knowing your worth, right? I'm not going to, go over that one extensively, but know your bottom line. And I kind of talked about that just a moment ago. So this begins early. The first call or the email, they're going to ask you if they ask you for your target salary or range, do not sell yourself short. Again, prior to even going into you applying for a position, these are the types of researching, or the type of researching you should be doing. Job titles, the salary ranges, what that looks like in people in your position. Now, there might be a difference between, a veteran person that's been there for several years versus, a first-time individual, but still knowing that, right? And not selling yourself short. Wait for the offer to negotiate until there is something that, could be tangible, right? Whether it's presented to you, in writing first or verbally first. Wait until there is something to negotiate. If you are provided when you're provided something verbally, always ask for that in writing. Okay, the reason for that, and I'll probably touch on this here in a moment, a little bit more, is so that you can really kind of take time to be deliberative about what it is you either want to counter with, or if you are, essentially liking what they presented to you. Okay. I would not use this opportunity when you get the offer, again, to kind of go too high, but again, know what your bottom line is, but you're wanted. So you've landed what you've been working for, right? Through the interview process, through, all of the, questions and answers, and just kind of just rummaging over your entire experience. But now it's time for those details, right? You want to make sure that they're mutually beneficial. Most of the time, I get the question of, will the offer be rescinded. I have not known many people that have ever received an offer, negotiated or tried to negotiate, and then the offer was rescinded. I do know that it has happened to other people, but it's because it wasn't about the negotiation piece. It had something to do with that place of employment, whether they completely just decided to restructure, or they were no longer going to have that position. But that could happen at any point in time. That's not typically going to happen just because of the negotiation. Okay. All right. So you have the offer. One of the things I do want to put in here, that I think most people might not think about in the realm of education. This is something that came up a lot because I used to work with teachers. And I don't know if there's any teachers or prospective teachers, but even if you're not, inquire about student loan repayment. Okay. You can, ask, but go ahead and check and see what's published on their benefits. And make sure that, if the time comes, ask about that in your interview as well. You can also ask about if you wanted to further your education, which might be very important to some of the companies that you're going to be working with. Would they be able to, supplement some of that with, tuition reimbursement? Okay. So back to pausing and reflecting before you decide. This is the time that you've received your package, if you will, to be deliberative. Okay. So when they ask you, you do not have to give an answer right away. Most in those statistics that I showed you earlier, 70% of individuals will expect you to wait to negotiate. So it's okay to say, can I have a few days? I would like a few days. Thank you so much for this offer, whatever it may be, to review what you've presented, and then get back to you. Most of the time, either they will upfront give you the time in which they need to know by, right? So they may say, yes, you can have until, let's say I offered on a Wednesday, they might say, yes, you can have until Friday at 5 o'clock. If you know that that's not going to be enough time for you, you can ask for an extension, but they may say no, that they need to know by Friday at 5 p.m. Okay, so that's going to be a case-by-case basis. But it's okay for you to say it up front too. Thank you so much for this offer. I'd love to have the weekend to think this over. Can I let you know on Monday? Okay, so just think about different ways of how you can phrase it. It's okay to ask for that time. Okay. And you don't have to walk away from this. Okay. So just because, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more. If you don't necessarily get what you're asking for, you can ask if you can revisit it again. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in a minute. But there are other ways that you can negotiate. It doesn't just mean salary negotiation. Okay. This is something that I did not know either. Clearly I didn't know to negotiate, but I didn't know that you can negotiate even more than a salary. And so I think it's really important that a lot of people don't think about some of those little things. And I'll go over that a little bit more here in just a moment. All right. I'm going to pause again. Kelsey, are there any questions?
Yes, there is one.
Okay.
The student was wondering if you are graduating from grad school with lots of experience in other fields and land a job in your field you studied for, how would you negotiate special when the offer is sent via email? Do you do a phone call or do you try to negotiate via the mode they communicated that with you?
That's a great question. I would say probably stay in the mode in which they communicated with you initially, unless in their letter it states, feel free to call if you would like to talk this over, which most probably would. The reason that they probably did it in writing first is because they might just be a company where everything, either compliance-wise, needs to be in writing, has to be in writing, so there's no cause for, you misunderstanding what they're saying. So that could be why they've done that. So you can ask for a conversation. That's certainly okay. But you would always want to make sure that you follow up with an email as well. So just as an example, for me personally, whenever I came over into this position at Northwestern Mutual, I received an offer verbally, but it was also in writing, and I was presented to it via a virtual, right? So he shared his page with me. So we went over it case by case. So I was hearing it verbally, but I was also seeing it, right? So I looked at the offer, and I asked for a few days to kind of think about it. I think I maybe took a day, and I went back. I tried to call him to have a conversation, and we just kept missing each other. And so I responded back in an email to what I was asking for. I believe he tried to call me back, and again, we just kind of kept missing each other. So he responded to the email and said, whatever the decision was. And then we just kind of went from there, honestly. So I think if you, are trying to talk to them in person, that's certainly okay. But definitely in the mode in which they communicate first is how you would at least want to communicate as well. So that was a really long answer to what I probably just could have said, yes, their mode, but just trying to give an example there.
Would you say, Michelle, though, even if you have a verbal negotiation, to still get the final product in writing?
100%, yes. And at any point in time, you or the employer ever go back and forth with a new kind of negotiation or a set of what you're asking for, always ask for that in writing as well. Yeah, anytime there's an update, absolutely.
Okay. So in summary, negotiation can happen verbally or written in email, but the final product should be written for both parties to share.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. That was the only question so far.
Okay. All right. So I just have some slides, or not slides here, but on this slide, I have some websites for salary and income by negotiation or by location. You've probably heard of some of these. You probably have maybe even been on some of these, but Glassdoor, PayScale, salary.com, and the Salary Project are probably that, and the U.S. Labor Bureau is probably also, another one that I probably should have put on here. But those are really the primary websites that I would go to look at, what people are making in those salaries. There's obviously, if you're moving locations like I did, I actually moved from Missouri to Texas, and then from Texas to California. So I got quite familiar with some of these websites because you're going to want to know what the cost of living, might be, right? So, and those are things that I know that, you can look up certainly online, but these are some that I would typically go to. Okay. So what if you hear no? I would say what we say in our business is no, maybe just means not right now. But you very well may hear a complete and total no. But you want to be, there might be some varying situations as to why you might hear no. So at an institution where I worked in higher education, sometimes there truly are very few positions that you can negotiate for. Depending on what level you're going in at. If you're going at a higher level, typically you can negotiate. At a lower level, it's a little bit harder sometimes, but that doesn't mean that it's impossible. They might be, okay, for an example, for teachers. Teachers typically are not able to negotiate because they're on a ladder scale as far as what their pay will be. Okay, so kind of know the company, know what you're going into in order to prepare yourself either to hear a no or not be able to negotiate maybe to the power that maybe you had wanted. Okay, so again, kind of being realistic, like I was talking about earlier, but being transparent. So, if salaries aren't published, if you work for a state organization, like an institution, where I came from, those are typically published because you work for the state. state knowledge. If not, you will be at a lot of corporations that will, be, I think they would look down upon, I guess, if you will, not supporting people to talk about their salaries, right? Because, people negotiate differently. People are going to make very different salaries. And so if for whatever reason you do know what somebody's salary might be in the role in which you're coming into, and maybe they have very different or similar experience rather, just be transparent to that. Right. So being aware of the discrepancy and stating it very diplomatically, that can be very difficult. I'm going to be very transparent and honest with you now. I think that that would be difficult, even for me to be able to do something like that. Right. You don't ever want to, throw somebody under the bus and be like, well, Kelsey makes this much, so why can't I? Right. So it's a matter of treading that in the right way. So revisiting. So this kind of goes back to one of those last slides I was telling you about, that you don't have to walk away. And also kind of going back to the question that was asked as well. So schedule a time to see if, maybe you aren't able to get what you want in your salary. Schedule a time to revisit it and get it in writing, right? Because some companies may say, okay, 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road, 1 year down the road, it may look like this. So once you hit certain benchmarks, that might be an opportunity, excuse me, to try to renegotiate. So you want to make sure that you get that in writing though. Okay. Again, researching, know what to expect, be ready to counter. So that's going to be some additional homework on your account as well. Homework doesn't stop whenever you graduate. So I'm kidding. So just make sure that you kind of do your research on that as well. The part that I love most about this though, is that you can negotiate more than the dollar. This is something, again, like I've told you, I did not know, right? Until I got to my first job and I saw a budget of the previous year. And I was like, oh, there's something in here for a cell phone, right? There's something in here for this. So if you have to use, and this is just an example, if you have to use your cell phone for the job that you're going into, you can negotiate $100 stipend or whatever it may be, right? Something reasonable for a cell phone, right? You can ask for more days of PTO, so that paid time off. You can negotiate remote work days, right? Again, not something that is unrealistic, but something that would be realistic. So these are things that can, again, be mutually beneficial, but allow you to have more balance, right? If the salary is not exactly where you want to be. If you are relocating, right, for this position, negotiating what that relocation cost may be. So I was, for example, presented with the relocation cost, renegotiated that a little bit. And again, I didn't go crazy, but it's the little things sometimes, where it's not in that overall salary where businesses are able to, negotiate and put some items in there. Okay. Questions about right here where we are? Anything?
There was a question in the chat asking for clarity on which of the resources you stated or talks about cost of living.
So back here.
Yes.
Yeah. So I would look at the salary.com, the one, the for that, but then there's the US labor census. I'm probably saying that backwards. That's where you could also look as well. And then there's a cost of living website. I do not have that one on here, and I do apologize. I'm actually not sure why I didn't put that on here. But if you just type in cost of living calculator, it'll provide you with primarily larger cities, right? So that's the other thing you have to think about as well. is that if you're going from a small city to a large city or vice versa, it's not always going to show that. So just kind of keep that in mind as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
I apologize. But I can provide some follow-up links if that would help to maybe put down so that there are some links there available.
Sure. Thank you.
All right. So what you can do, again, researching, I know that some of this is repetitive in this sense because it's so important to do, right? I'm not going to, go over it constantly, but I want to know that it is something that needs to happen. If there is not a salary range presented, I know that there are some states, I believe that I think California is one of them, and I'm still kind of learning all of these rules, so bear with me here for California. But if you're going to a different state, they do not have to put a range. So ask if there is a range, if there's not one that is presented. That gives you a really good kind of a picture, okay? Sometimes though, and I'll just put this here as kind of like caveat, some ranges will be like $60,000, right? So know that, if you're a first-time job seeker, you would probably be in the first quarter of what that looks like, right? If you've been in a job for a while, obviously you can go down a little bit. If you're a mid-career, you can probably go right there in the middle. And then negotiating sometimes based on your experience, your roles and responsibilities, and then if you have additional education, okay? Paint a picture of your experience and your performance in that. So maybe you are a first-time job seeker, but maybe you've been in student government. Maybe you've, you went back, not back to college, but you have extended maybe college for a little bit because you were working a job that was paying for your schooling, okay? Maybe you've had managerial types of jobs that since you've been in college, but they were on campus, something of that nature. Be able to, again, know your strengths, kind of going back to what I said at the very beginning, and knowing your worth, right? Being able to tell a story of why you are deserving of what you're asking for, okay? So countering this kind of, again, goes back to that question. You can counter more than once, okay? You may counter, I would not counter more than twice. So you may counter and they will come back with something. You can look at this again and say, okay, to this, this, and this, but I want to change this, whatever that may be. I would not go back and forth more than twice, okay? But always, always be positive. This is in everything that you do, especially within, looking for a job, whether you're interviewing or negotiating. You just want to make sure that you're positive and then be aware. If you're negotiating, whether it's over the phone, your tone, in email, your tone, if you're in person, your body language as well. Most of the time, you will not be negotiating in person, okay? It'll either be over the phone or written, but in a case that it may be for whatever reason, just make sure if that offer is given to you in person, that you're aware of how you're receiving it, okay? An example that might be, let's say you're provided an offer in person and you hear it and you're kind of maybe taken aback by it, because that may very well happen. Be aware of your body language. Always take the time to say, thank you for the offer. I'd like to look at this a little bit more. And then you can go back and negotiate, not in person, but when you get that offer, if you are in person, just be very aware of what, of your body stature, okay? Okay, so, oops, I'm so sorry. So that was the to do, I apologize. So what not to do, not to be negative. So, but don't settle for your first offer. Again, most employers are expecting it, okay? So make sure that you negotiate something, but not just to negotiate, okay? Just because, don't negotiate just to negotiate, okay? Have a reason for it. Have an understanding of why you're asking what you're asking for, okay? Don't be boastful. but still knowing your worth and being able to paint that picture, like I was saying before. But don't be, I guess over boastful is why that's here. Do not give an ultimatum or be combative. I know that some people may think like, oh my gosh, like why would anybody, do that? You'd be surprised actually, because I think people are so kind of shocked at what they might be presented. So just make sure that you're kind of aware of that as well. Don't go too high on a counter offer. Again, I think I said this earlier. If you are offered something at 50,000, don't go to 80. Again, be very realistic, but never apologize for negotiating. Okay. You have earned this. You have gotten your degree. You are educated. You may have gone through additional professional developments. You may have additional degrees and the experience that you have, even if you don't have experience. So I have a lot of students who were a student. That was their number one job. That is okay. You have the background and the knowledge to be able to apply it to that position. Okay. So those would be the biggest things that I would say of what not to do. Questions, Kelsey? Okay. All right. So tips for your future, keep learning. I think that this is so important because you're only going to allow yourself to be more professionally, developed, but personally as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to be in the form of a degree or a certificate. Continually pour into yourself. Okay. Making yourself, again, better personally will make yourself typically better professionally. Don't ever give up. And I know this isn't just for negotiating. This is kind of just for a future. But don't ever give up if, let's say in a negotiation, you don't get everything that you have requested. Again, go back to revisit it, get that in writing to be able to do that. Trust yourself and knowing your worth. Very important. Clearly one thing, if I want you to get out of this, is to know that you know your worth. Okay. Being patient, it may take some time. There are some companies in a negotiation or in a hiring process that take a very long time. Universities, from my experience, are one of those. So just make sure that you are patient with it. If you're wondering where you are in the process, email or call and ask. Just say, I'm really thankful for this offer. I just want to make sure that you received my counter. Is there anything that we need to discuss, right? You can call me or whatever that may look like. Typically though, and you would hope that people would keep you updated as they go along, but sometimes it does fall through the cracks. It is okay to follow up with that. Okay. Typically though, during a negotiation, most people will not leave you hanging. Okay. But getting promoted. So with all of this, with learning and never giving up and trusting yourself, trusting the process, going back to my story, when I talked about Dr. Catherine Cheval, she was the person who I think really empowered me to know my worth, but saw in me what I didn't see in myself. And so I was able to get promoted under her. I hope that all of you have a Catherine in your life. But if for some reason, you don't, just know that you can get promoted, you can have this experience, and that you can get to where you want to be. Okay. Sometimes that might look like getting more education. Sometimes that might look like changing jobs. It's what I did. I never thought in a million years that I would ever leave higher education. And so, it's great how it's all worked out for me. But sometimes it's the experience that you get, not always the education that you get, that will kind of lead you in the trajectory of your path. Okay. All right. So that is everything that I have for today. Are there any questions?
Yes.
Go ahead, Colin.
Thank you. Let's try to turn the video on. There we go. Hi, thank you for speaking with us today. Um, I was just wondering, would you say it's always worth negotiating? Like, do you think it's always in your best interest to negotiating? Like, I was thinking, like, as an example, if maybe you got an offer that was like exceeded your expectations, like you got a really good offer in a scenario like that, would you still recommend negotiating, or do you think it's like it might seem like rude or like disrespectful to do so?
So I would still negotiate, and I get that a lot from first time students, because it's like this amount of money, right? That they've never even thought that they could have. But just because you negotiate doesn't mean you have to negotiate salary either, right? So kind of taking all of that into account. But they just offered you something that they believe that you're worth, right? That they know this role to have been paid before, but also knowing that it's going to be harder, right? So when you negotiate for the very first time, that's the time that you will more than likely get the majority of the money that you would ever get, right? So it's harder, it's not impossible, but it is harder at times to get that higher salary. So it's okay. Again, they expect it, right? So I work with a lot of students, or I have in the past, where, they don't want to negotiate because it does exceed their expectations. Okay, well, they just told you what they believe that you're worth. And now knowing your worth on top of that, certainly. Now I wouldn't go, again, too high, but I think it's certainly okay to go up. Again, very quick answer could have been yes. And I very verbose. So sorry.
Could I just add one little thing? I was just also wondering, like, do you think is it a mistake to ask for too little money also? Because then it seems like would you say there's probably like a good like happy medium in terms of asking not for too much, but also not for too little? So it could seem like you only ask for a few extra dollars. It might like just seem like why even bother at that point?
Yeah. So that's why it would be really important to ask for a range, right? So if you know what their range is, sometimes they'll say, what is your, and you'll see this on job applications sometimes, right? What's your desired salary? I would, if you're able to put a range in there yourself, go ahead. But that's why it's always important for you, if you can, to get their range. So you know where you might fit. So let's say the range was 50 to 80,000. It's your very first job. Maybe you could say, 55 based on whatever it may be, right? But have the reasonings why you're asking what you're asking for. If you are coming into something brand new and the salary was a 50 to 80, the likelihood of you getting 65 and above would probably be very slim, right? Does that mean that you shouldn't ask for it? Not necessarily. But I would just say be realistic, and really goes back to that being realistic and knowing your bottom line as well. Does that
Thank you.
answer?
Definitely.
I think Colin's question actually ties in great with the one that was added to the chat, so I'll ask that one next. But while being mindful of not varying too much from the original offer, is there any recommendation on what amount percentage wise a salary increase might be fair to counter?
I would say 10%. Yeah, that's going to be probably a no more than, but a good starting point, I would say, probably would be anywhere from 10 to 15%.
Awesome, thank you.
Mhm.
Another one that was asked in the chat was, are most employers responsive to negotiations quite easily? I know you said 70% expect negotiations, but will they also be open to it?
For the most part, the majority, yes, absolutely. Again, yes, they are expecting it, but they will normally be open to that. Again, I think that in the industries where, it's stated that it's non-negotiable for whatever reason it may be, that's obviously going to be much harder, but yes, to answer your question very simply, yes.
Thank you. Any other questions from students? You can unmute and ask, or you can type in the chat and I can verbalize it. Give it a minute in case people are typing, but.
I'm going to go ahead and share my very last slide while we might be waiting. If anybody is interested in a financial representative internship with Northwestern Mutual, working with me in the downtown San Diego location, there is a QR code here. It's very simple in what I would ask on that. When you go to the QR code, it is your name and your email address, and I will reach out to you, and then we can take some time and follow up, and so you can learn more about what we have to offer here. Anything else, Kelsey?
No, that has come in. I guess the question I was thinking of for you too is, how much can you talk to the equitable side of the negotiation process? So I know some companies may say we can't negotiate because there are certain brackets that different level roles have to be within, or compensate, or if you're sales and you have the sales piece as well, that can be played into it. So how much can you speak to that part of negotiating?
For a sales aspect, and just correct me if I'm wrong in understanding this, for a sales aspect, I think something that you would be able to negotiate in addition to, let's say there is a base salary for a sales, are the commissions that you bring in. So, you know, what can kind of think about what you would want your salary, your overall salary to be, and kind of think about what you would have to get, right? So usually in a sales or commissions, you're going to get what you get out, what you put in, right? So, you know, if you recruit so many people, do you get a certain amount? So $500 for one person, or 1 to like 20 people. This is if you're a recruiter, or maybe if you make so many sales, if you get from this to this, you know, range, you get this much money, something like that. Is there an annual bonus? So I don't know if that necessarily answers, I hope that it does what you're asking, but that would really, I think, help if there is a base and they can't go above that on the salary part of it. Can your commissions be something that you can negotiate?
Yeah, thank you. That was helpful. And then the bracket piece too, sorry, it's kind of a two-part question. Do you have any information on that piece of the employer side, knowing that certain job levels need to be within certain brackets, so there's only so much room for that negotiation piece?
Yeah, that's the hard, it is difficult. So I think about, you know, higher ed, they have a lot of brackets. You know, if you're within this title range, you would get this. With this title range, you would get this. And so that might be something that you can look at negotiating as well, is maybe a different title. So that has happened. Let's say you're going in as a coordinator 1 or something. I'm just using an example. And it has a lower bracket, right? That they can't go out of, or that you would gross out of faster. You can try to negotiate, okay, if I do, you know, an additional this, and this within the job, can it be a coordinator 2 and get put into that bracket? Look at what, if we're looking at pay gaps, right? Look at what the people who are in that organization, maybe what their titles are, because if they are associated with brackets based on titles, you can look at what those titles might look like, or you can say, I want to revisit this in a year. If after a year or after 6 months, if I have this, I want to be moved to this title. And that can help with the brackets, but also knowing the score of, you know, the individuals who are there, and what their titles are can be helpful as well. Did that help answer that second part?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Students, any other questions? We have 7 minutes with Michelle, so this is a great time to ask her questions you may not be able to ask every day to others. Okay. Well, make sure to scan the QR code if you're interested in learning more about Northwestern Mutual. And Michelle, I don't know if you feel comfortable sharing LinkedIn or email, but if so, feel free to put that in the chat for students so they can connect with
Absolutely.
you.
I was just getting ready to say that, and I probably should have put this on, so I apologize. I'm going to stop my share so I can find the chat. I can't find the chat box. Oh, there it is. Okay. So if you were to just to look me up on LinkedIn, I'll probably be like one of the first people that come up, but my email, michelle.bollinger@nm.com, is to reach me directly if you want to chat about anything, honestly. So I serve as a mentor to other students at universities. And sometimes that's like a brief check-in just because of my background. And sometimes it's a little bit more than that. And I love doing that. I absolutely love working with students. So in any way that I can help you, I'm here.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Can we give her a round of applause for all the hard work that she put into this presentation? It looked amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you, students, for attending too.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for attending. Yes. And if you're watching online at a later date, thank you as well.
Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
You're getting lots of thank yous in the chat as well.
Thank you. That's awesome. Yes.
Perfect. Okay, I'm gonna stop. There we go.